that as well, potentially. So we're going to just lock in. I'm going to keep this short and sweet on the intro. Is we've got Eric Smart and Cody Thorup here to go through creative financing. How can we essentially bulletproof our business in 2026? And it's about being a problem solver. It's about understanding different options to get deals done. And so excited to have these two rock stars go ahead and share some of their value. So give them a hand.
Thank you. We're going to jump in and first start with Eric. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Right on. No, isn't that how that goes? How that game? Is Corby not in the crowd? Okay. I'm Eric Smart. I'm the broker owner of Aries Mortgage. If you guys don't know me or my team, please come upstairs. We're on the second floor. We'd love to meet ya.
Cool. Maybe I'll just introduce myself. So Eric, and I'll kind of explain the hope of today too. We're going to go through a couple of the creative solutions on the lending side, and then I want to do a deep dive into seller financing and how that can be an awesome tool in your tool bag for sellers and buyers. And then we'll go through just some of the strategies, some of the things to be aware of, contracts, and then I've got a great value add, and I'll give you access to our spreadsheet that we essentially at the very beginning when the market started to change and rates went up, I went Jack Petty. There we go. Thank you. Jack's Petty. I took all of his classes, paid for his spreadsheet, and then Cameron Wilson is an Excel wizard. So we sat down. We probably have 80 plus hours creating this spreadsheet, and so I'll give you that at the end with a couple reviews. We'll get to that point. So there'll be an awesome value add here at the end. So think of your questions, and we'll kick it off with Eric. I'll give you the magic pointer and go for it.
Is your spreadsheet a subscription model?
No, it's not.
Okay. All right. Just wanted to find out. So how many of us have been under contract or have sent somebody for a pre-approval and you've struck out on options? They don't have money, they lose their job, they're about to retire. Nobody in the room has ever run into that. Okay, cool. Right on. So I'm going to talk about just a couple strategies right now that we've come across recently. One of them's very well known in the market. The first one, maybe not, that we've used to close loans for people that ordinarily a couple years ago, I probably would have turned away. Yeah. Okay. So the two loan programs we're going to talk about are asset depletion and DSCR loans. How many of us have heard of a DSCR loan? Yeah, just about everybody, right? Pretty well known. How about asset depletion? Okay, Dave. Yeah? Hell yeah. Heck yeah. I like it. Get jacked up for that. So some of the reasons why deals, they really just die on the table. So your income doesn't fit your traditional Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac or FHA guidelines. You get self-employed borrowers where their CPA is better than the loan, right? So their job is to save you as much money as possible from Uncle Sam. And sometimes that just does not work out well for mortgage financing. People that just retire. Oi. If I have a borrower right now, personal example, this guy makes $25,000 a month on a salary, retiring, doing a new build, gonna retire the month after his new build is completed. We can't use his salaried income to qualify because he does not have a high probability of continuing that income. It's a problem. Realtors. Holy cow. How many of us have been in the business for a couple of years and we just don't have that salary base that we used to, and we're building up our business? It can be problematic. Or you get into something like cost segregation. Cody, do we know anybody that's hurt in the last couple of years?
Yeah, me.
Okay. Yep. Examples. Right. So usually no income equals no loan, right? No dice. You either have to wait or get somebody to co-sign for you or commit some light fraud, right? Not advisable. Not in my loan shop, just so we're all on the same page. Okay. So these two programs that we're going to talk about, they reduce a lot of these barriers if we get the right borrowers in place to do it. So let's talk about asset depletion. Okay. So we take your liquid assets and we convert it into qualifying income. You don't need a traditional job. You get laid off tomorrow. My guy that I have that's retiring a couple years ago would have been, I was going to use bad terminology there. No dice would have been on his loans. We don't need their tax return. Can't be for an investment property. We can only use an asset depletion loan for a primary residence or a second home. Okay. So that's big to keep in mind for your investors if we run into this. Ideal really for retirees is what I was thinking of when I was doing this loan program. Jake, what were you thinking of when you're doing this loan program right now? Right? Is it a retiree? Yeah. Okay. Yep. Business owners that are between ventures or somebody that's like recently sold a business. I had a guy last year that sold 3 businesses, was like, F it, I don't need to work, right? I'm living off of what I've banked away. Somebody that's getting a pretty good divorce settlement, not a bad play, or just our regular, like really solid investors that are high net worth that focus on day trading or they're into crypto or something like that. Here's how this works. Their investment, right? And I'll go over what some of the accounts are that we can use. They have to be 1.5 times of the loan balance and qualified income. So if we're doing a $400,000 loan, anybody pretend to be Rain Man in here? Luke does. Yeah, 600,000 in assets. If they're the right assets, we can do a loan for them because we're going to take into account that there's enough assets there for them to be able to draw enough income to pay their loan. Okay. So the way that we calculate this is, yes, I found that button. Okay. So monthly income equals net qualified assets divided by 84 months. So we would take that 600,000 that they have in the qualified account divided by 84. That's what we would use for the qualifying income. Does that make sense? Last person I thought would have a question. Yes, Jake. Ooh, I like that. If you would have been 30 seconds more patient, we would have got there. Okay. So everybody knows Jake is the best loan officer in the room, not named me. Okay. Sorry, Sheila. Sheila's awesome too. I'm kidding. I forgot Stacy was here. Okay. So here's how we use the asset types. Okay. So if you have a checking or a savings account or a money market account, you can use 100% of what you have in that account. If it's in stocks or bonds and they're publicly traded, we can use 60% of the value of the account. Does that make sense? Right? So if you have $100,000 in that account, we can use how much, Shoni? 60,000. Yep. If it's 401k or retirement, right? You can use 70% of this account. This is what I see a lot of. And that's under the age of 59 and a half, 70%, over the age of 59 and a half, 80%. So the guy that I'm looking at has a 401k that's got $3 million in it, right? So I can use 80% of that $3 million divided by 84 months and use it to qualify him for the loan. And then we can't use business funds. So you can't use like the equity in a business to qualify. which kind of stinks, but I mean, anyways, we can talk about some strategies about how to get around that. Jake, did that answer your question? Okay. Any questions on asset depletion or this? Yeah. Repeat the question. So if I'm understanding, you're asking, can you mix and match income? So if they're still in the W-2 phase or they haven't retired, but they've got money in their 401k, can they use both? Yes, you can. Yep. Good question. Any other questions on this one? That is probably the best question. So rates are on these programs from what I've seen, and it's going to be super dependent on the normal things that drive rates up and down, right? How much you're putting down on the loan program. We can do 15% down on something like this is the minimum to put down. The higher the credit score, the less the risk, the better the rate type of deal. So the one I was looking at yesterday priced in at 6.5 at par. Whereas we're at, on a regular conventional home loan, we're at about a 5.99, sliding between 5.99 and 6.125 right now in the market. You can still buy that rate down if you need to as well. So actually, for being somewhat risky, fairly risky, to be a 0.5% over what a regular conventional loan is and still get you into the home, it's pretty solid. Solid. Did that answer your question, Tana? Yeah. Any other questions on this loan program, Taylor Wright? Okay. There are not on these. So it's a non-QM loan that the investor that I'm looking at on it doesn't have a prepay on it. The next program that we're going to talk about, a prepayment penalty, will definitely drive down your rate because you're guaranteeing that, to the investor that you're not going to refinance. So is everybody pretty familiar with what a DSCR loan is? Right? Debt service coverage ratio. The investment guy doesn't know what it is. That feels right. Okay. So this is geared specifically toward our investors that we have. And a lot of times, I shouldn't say a lot of times, sometimes investors, their accountants either do really good with their taxes and they just don't have enough provable income to qualify. This particular program uses the rents from the property. So the market rents, not what it's renting for now, for the property to help qualify for the loan. Does that make sense? So I'm not going to collect any income documentation from this buyer. I'm just going to send the appraiser out. They're going to do a rent schedule on the home, tell me what the rents are, and it has to come in at it has to come in over what the monthly mortgage payment is. Okay, so if this is just simple math, as it says, right? So the PITIA, that's principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and homeowners association dues. If it comes out to $2,200, I need the market rent for the property to come out to $2,200. And there's a few other programs that offer different factors, but by and large, this is what I'm looking for, is the market rent to cover the payment. Make sense? Yep. Works out pretty good for our investors, self-employed people that, again, write off too much on their tax returns. This works out really well if you have a serial investor. So conventional loans max you at having 10 financed properties. When you go over that, you need to find a different solution. The investors, the max I have an investor that'll go up to 35 financed properties, which is pretty unique. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
If if you're going to do like an investment property for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you do a combination of an income. Yes,
You can't. But did everybody catch that question? So if you're buying not even just a new build, but any type of property, and there's an ADU down in the basement, the question was, can you mix and match a DSCR loan with a full documentation loan? And the answer to that is no. They're two different and distinct loan programs. However, and we do this all the time, if there is an ADU and it meets the requirements, we can still use 75% of the gross rents to qualify with that. It's just the appraiser just does a riddle roll on it. Good question. Other questions on the DSCR loan? Okay. One thing about DSCR loans, those loans are super duper risky. So I priced one out and I priced it with a 20% down payment for an investment property, and it was pricing out at 7.25% at par. That was with a 1-year prepayment penalty. Is everybody familiar with what a prepayment penalty is? Yeah? Okay. Shoni, are you familiar with what a prepayment penalty is? Okay. A prepayment penalty is depending on how long. So this one I priced out was a 1-year prepayment penalty. If rates drop in the next year and the people refinance on the 1-year prepay, they're going to collect 6 months worth of interest as a penalty for refinancing early. And there's different versions of the prepayment penalty. I was looking at one with, I was using Rocket Mortgage for it, and it was a 5-year prepayment penalty, and it got the rate all the way down to 6.25% on an investment property with 20% down. And the penalty was just adjusted interest for every year that you have left on the prepayment penalty. But it's definitely, it's a risk reward documentation deal. Really quickly, if we want to consider a program like this, get the people in early, right? Like sooner rather than later. If they're self-employed, if you think there might be trouble qualifying, get it to our desk early so we can get through everything and get them properly prepared to go out and get a home. Okay. Questions on either of these loan programs? I just took up all of Cody's time.
That's all right. We forgive you. Give him a round of applause. Okay, maybe I'll jump in first. A little bit of my background. I spent 10 years in construction. I had a wholesaling and flipping business out of Maryland for 4 years. I flipped a bunch of homes here in Utah. Very versed with tons of contracts, investor contracts, wholesaling stuff. You name it, I've seen it. As a team, my current role is director of sales of Red Sign team. We pivoted when the market started to change for rates. So we've done probably well over 100 seller financing deals on the sell side and the buy side the last couple of years. It's an awesome tool as an agent to use to put more deals together and maximize a return on the sell side and get buyers into houses that normally couldn't qualify for a variety of reasons. Okay. Before we jump in, raise of hands, who has gotten a seller financing deal to the close table completed? Okay. It's a good gauge for the room. So we've got a handful of us. Good job. They're a little tricky. It's a little wild, wild west. You can put literally anything in the contract. You can structure them different. You can amortize them different. I've done longer amortization schedules. We're used to 30-year amortization schedules with a lender. I've done a 40-year to get the payment down on a deal. So I first want to ask, though, and I know we don't have a ton of time, but what do you guys struggle with? What is hard about seller financing? If I could cover anything over the next 10 minutes for you guys to take something away, what would it be? Luke? Okay, so helping seller feel comfortable. That's a good one. What else? Judd? Okay, that's usually the biggest barrier. helping agents that aren't familiar with seller financing understand the benefits and how they can help convince their seller to do it. It's another good one. Anything else? For sure, we can get into that. It's helpful to use a title company that's familiar with it. So Burgundy, Real Advantage are awesome. They do a great job. There's some great title companies that specialize in seller financing. We will send everything to Burgundy. So upstairs, she's awesome. Her team's great at putting them together. Ooh, good question. I'll show you the calculator. Yes and no. I've done it both ways. So depending on how much money is collected from down payment from the buyer, you can structure it where you take some of the commission today and some of it down the road when they pay the property off on the balloon. So you can do both. So another good question. Okay, anything else? Okay. Types of seller financing. There's a couple different types to be familiar with. Okay, so all-inclusive and note and deed of trust. So this is going to be common for all-inclusive is going to be when you have an underlying mortgage on the property. If the property is paid for in the addendum, seller financing addendum on the MLS, it will have two options. One's going to be all-inclusive. The other one's going to be a note and deed and trust. Note and deed and trust is paid off. All-inclusive will have an underlying mortgage. Okay, contract for deed. Difference between these two, all-inclusive means that your buyer is going to take ownership of the property on county record, okay? Everyone's going to sign a deed. It's going to be sent to county. Title is going to change hands. Contract for deed, everything's going to be signed. Seller on county record will still be the owner. The reason why you may consider doing one of these two most commonly is all-inclusive. If you just have less than 15 or 20% down, I've seen contract for deed. It's a little bit easier to foreclose. You don't have to get in it's cheaper to foreclose on a buyer if they don't perform on it. Okay. So there's times that could be an option. Lease option, if you have a buyer who needs, or a seller who's going to purchase a new home, seller financing can be a little tricky. You've got to start with a lease option first, and then take that to Eric and say, hey, I've got this lease option to purchase from my buyer. They're collecting this much down payment. They're paying this much a month. It's similar as if you were going to get a renter in the property. The goal is to collect the down payment, use the monthly to offset your current mortgage so you can go purchase. As soon as you purchase that new property for the seller, then the buyer can exercise his lease or her lease to purchase the property, and we execute seller financing. Okay? And then subject to. That's essentially, these are the sweetest deals. If you can find those, you essentially take over the underlying mortgage where it's at in the amortization schedule. So Jake Bowers, last year we closed on a condo. He came to the table with $62,000 for a vineyard condo. We paid like 15 grand under value, and he took over the 3.5% rate. And he's in the amortization schedule about 5 years, and he out the gates was cash flowing. I think he cash flows $400 or $500. So phenomenal investment, great deal. Those are some of the sweetest if you can find them. They're difficult to find, but if you can, that's a gold mine. Okay, I'm going to give you a real quick case study, okay? This is a house in Provo I sold in 2023. And the reason why I'm bringing this up, because we're coming full circle now, and my client, this home is back up for sale with the buyer who purchased it, and they will get cashed out of the deal here shortly once it goes under contract. So it's a home in Provo, 4-bed, 2-bath, 15, 16 square feet, sold in 2023. They had it listed with a different agent. It was overpriced. Market obviously was slow during that time, and so I took the listing over, and we discussed seller financing. I'm going to show you the calculator. This is a snapshot of the calculator that Cameron and I built. So on the left-hand side, you'll have your sales assumption. This is going to be your buyer terms. Okay, so if I'm on the buy side, this is potentially what I'm considering offering for this property. The underlying mortgage information's here. This is key in using this spreadsheet. You've got to have this dialed in. If you don't, it doesn't work. We have got this down to where it's like down to the penny when title goes to run numbers. Okay, this gives you your buyer payment. Okay, so it breaks down exactly what my buyer is going to pay. On the right-hand side, the question about upfront commissions, back-end commissions. So I've got a section for that if you want to break it up and split it. Right-hand section is going to be the green. This is the money for the sellers. So normally if I'm helping a buyer, I'll take a screenshot or snapshot of the far left-hand side there, because that helps them understand what are we offering, what's our payment, what does it break down to. On the right-hand side, this is what I would show a seller. So how do you help a seller understand how it affects them? This is where a great calculator makes it really simple to break the numbers down. So right-hand side, top box, how much money will they get day of closing? So in this situation, $60,000 down payment. We've got 6% in commissions on the buy side, list side. We had $2,000 in concessions. We've got our title insurance. So it shakes out. My seller got about $31,000 at the close table when we closed. They left $143,000 in equity. Their monthly cash flow, they were making $875 a month in cash flow. We actually ran the numbers. If they were going to put this towards their new home, it was almost sixes on the value or benefit to the cash flow aspect. So for them, they were staying in the deal longer, being able to take this money and help offset their new mortgage, which was phenomenal for them. It made them feel way more comfortable in their new home. And on the back end, you guys will see there's $141,000 on the back end that they will receive here once the home sells. Now, how is that different than a traditional sell? This is this box right here. So I just ran a quick scenario. Somebody, if they were to bring us an offer $9,000 below sells or purchase the purchase price we had, commissions on both sides, normally you're paying more in concessions. So here's the other thing too. You naturally net more money because you don't have the concessions that we see in the market today. So over a 3-year period, that's all we had this set up as, is a 3-year balloon. The benefit was an additional $46,000 that my seller will net as soon as it sells here in the coming months. So huge value add to say, look, I know you wanted a little bit more money. The market didn't deliver that, but over a few years, you are going to net a substantial amount of more money than you would if you sold it today, which was 46 grand. So you average that over 3 years, it's a lot of money. It's not only you're making almost $900 a month, you're also making an additional more than $1,000 a month over the 3 years. So phenomenal value add. Question in the back. Correct. Yeah, which is a good way to, because you're still going to get, the mortgage is still in place. They still have an underlying mortgage. So you're still going to get your 1098 if I'm a seller at the end of the year for my mortgage write-off. But the buyer should also get a 1098 from escrow specialist. We'll talk about that. I would never do a seller financing deal unless you're using a third-party vendor for the buyer to pay, okay? So it's important. It's $20 a month. I think you're crazy not to use them. You'll pay more than that to a tax person to prepare your documents and do all the numbers. So the way you look at it here is my seller's principal and interest payment was $993. Obviously, the buyer is going to assume all taxes and insurance over here. The difference on the new buyer payment is my cash flow for my seller, is how that's set up. That's where you get the green over there on the monthly. Case study 2. So I'm going to fly through here these last few minutes. This is actual real person today that I'm working with. Buyer's recently divorced, sold a home, has a fat chunk of money to put down. Credit sucks. Ex-wife stopped making payments on a car and credit cards. He's got a 500 credit score. So it's just limiting his ability to go purchase, okay? But he's got a big down payment. So this is a great option for buyers who've got a decent amount of money and want to go get into something that normally the deal fell apart because a normal lender couldn't get them approved. Now, we have a path to get approved, but his rate is well over 7%. We're limited on our loan options. His buying power is limited because his rate's higher. It's just not the ideal situation for him, where this, being able to pivot to a seller financing deal, makes this a better deal. And usually we can go buy a higher purchase price. Also, investors on the buy side, it's really hard to pencil things. We all know that. It's really hard to make things pencil. But if you've got a decent down payment, 15 to 20%, you can find things that pencil by using seller financing. Strategies for buyers. So I have looked at the MLS for the last 3 years, every couple weeks. On average, the past 4 years, only 3% of listings offer seller financing. Okay, this is the biggest caveat in this whole thing. Judd mentioned, how do you get a seller or listing agent to be open to seller financing? It's difficult, okay? Most sellers or most agents in our market just don't understand it, don't have experience with it. So I'll explain how my process works, but on the sales side, it's a marketing strategy that going to a listing appointment and saying, hey, this is a different approach to sell your home. Less than 3% of homes currently are using this as a marketing tool. So it doesn't mean you have to take a seller financing offer, but it allows us to go market your home in a different way that will stir up more showings and more activity. We've had experiences as a team where we've had seller financing as an option. We didn't take it, but it allowed us to go get more than one offer and pin our conventional buyer against a seller financing deal to go get that person to pay more. And we still took the conventional offer. Okay. It doesn't happen all the time, but again, it's a marketing tool that you should use to not only help your clients potentially make more money, but sell their home for faster and for more money if you can go the conventional route. So normally what I would do with a buyer, I would identify the buy box. What are they looking for? I would create a text template, okay? And I would include a little bit about my buyer and the terms that would be ideal, especially their down payment, okay? And then I would start sending texts to listing agents, okay? I don't go show my buyers homes and then find out later and see if they'll be open to seller financing. I want to find out if a seller and a listing agent are open before I go waste my time. So I'll create a template for my buyer. I'll just start texting listing agents around the buy box that they're after. And then once I get a yes or a maybe, then we'll go see the home and see if it's a good fit, okay? In this current market we're in, high inventory and longer days on market will improve opportunities for seller financing buyers, okay? So if a home's been sitting for 100+ days, no activity, seller's desperate, maybe they weren't open to seller financing. It's not marked on the MLS. Doesn't mean that they won't consider it if you can explain it. The reason why the spreadsheet or the calculator is awesome is because it breaks all the info down that you can send it and is just totally crystal clear on how it will benefit their client potentially. Contracts to use: standard REPSI, seller financing addendum to the REPSI. Okay, there's no secret thing that you have to use. You can just use what's on the MLS. Okay. When you search seller financing, there'll be two. Seller financing addendum to the real estate purchase contract is the one that you'll want to use. Okay. Important terms to remember. These are the most common things that I cover with our agents. Buyer's new loan amount should never be less than the seller's outstanding loan unless you include a prepayment penalty. So I'll give you an example. I took the same spreadsheet and changed it a little bit. Sometimes it's awesome to say, hey, my buyer's got a ton of money we can throw down. It's amazing. Your seller's going to have so much money at closing. We're going to put $250,000 down on this house. The seller's mortgage current balance is $225. Our new loan amount is only $175 or $179. Seems amazing because they're going to get a ton of money at closing. The problem is the month-to-month's in the red and the back end's in the red. It means it will cannibalize itself. It means that every month the buyer is going to require the seller to have to bring $89 to the table so that the monthly mortgage payment can get made. Doesn't work. Okay, you're doing a deal that you shouldn't do. Okay, same thing on the back end. Buyer goes to refinance in a few years. All of a sudden, the seller is getting a phone call saying, I need $39,000 to bring to the table so that we can close this refinance and pay your mortgage off. Doesn't work. Sellers went and spent the money. Something's happened. They're nowhere to be found. Who's going to pay the 39 grand? Okay. So the only way I would structure this, I have structured a seller financing deal that was in the red. On the back end, I would never do the monthly. Okay. I never want a seller to have to bring money every month so that the payment can be made through escrow specialists. The back end, I've done it when numbers are really tight. Someone's over their skis, underwater. We don't want to go the short sell route. And so we've created a prepayment penalty and you can, part of this calculator down below that you don't see is an amortization schedule for both my seller and the buyer. And you can identify the month that it actually changes over and goes green. Okay. So I have done it. I just would stay away from it. Please use a third-party escrow company. Escrow specialist is awesome. Buyer's payment is late after 7 days. You'll run into an issue if it's any more than 7 days. By the time they make their payment, escrow specialist cuts a check to the servicer and they send it off. It's late. And the seller's mortgage is late. And then they start getting hit with late fees. Okay, so never do more than 7 days. And never seller finance a Utah housing loan. That's a no-no. Stay away from it. Okay, they regularly check title. They will find you, and the due on sell clause will come into effect. Additional terms, you'll see there's 10 additional terms. I took a bunch from Jax Petty's contract and added it into the seller financing sheet. We flew through this. There's a ton of things to go over. Any questions before I end? It's not enough time. I could spend an hour going over seller financing stuff. Due on sell clause, super common. Biggest concern that most sellers have. What's this due on sell clause? It's essentially a servicer can, due on sell clause exists. The catch though, if you talk to anybody, in order for them to enact the due on sell clause, they have to stop making or taking the payment. So as long as the payment's being made, we have not, over 100 deals the last couple of years, I've not had one situation where we've ever ran into that. Okay. As long as the buyer keeps making the payment, the servicer is getting paid. They literally have to take that payment, send it back to the seller and say, I don't want your money. I want you to pay the loan off. You're in trouble. So just keep making your payments. Okay. That's how I explain it to a seller.
What's your out for your seller to buy another home if they do this?
Yeah. So there's two ways to do it. If seller wants to buy a home, we either have to start with a lease option to buy immediately, or you have to have 12 consecutive payments made by the buyer so that you can show a lender that you haven't been making the payment for 12 months. So if you have both, one of those options will help your seller qualify for the next home. So if they're not interested in buying in the next year, yeah, it'll take 70. Yep.
They also need to be on title. And so those other people need to be on title, right?
Correct.
To show ownership.
Yep.
The other way is if they showed as note income over 2 years on their taxes.
Cool.
How do you protect the seller of that buyer buying stage, you know that he's gonna have to deal with, that buyer's not turning around and flipping it and doing another seller finance for somebody else?
The contract. You can put it as an additional term in the seller financing. I've done, commonly you can put, if a buyer misses 2 payments in a row, seller takes back title of the property and forecloses. You could put seller and buyer agree that buyer cannot or will not change title during the terms that we've spelled out. You know, you can put it in the contract if you're worried about an investor buying it and flipping it. So you can put it in there to protect your seller. That's the neat thing about seller financing is you can put a lot of different terms in a seller financing deal depending on how it's structured. Yep, seller's the bank. Okay, so if you want the sheet, my give today. So write KW Westfield and Red Sign Team review. We're just continue to push reviews. We'd love to get a bunch for the office as well. And so if you text me your name, email, and if you have a review page, I'll return the favor. I'll write you a review. Okay. I will send you our spreadsheet. I think I paid $200 for Jax's spreadsheet when I did it a couple years ago. So this is way better. There's multiple pages. It will give you the option to compare seller financing to renting your house to a traditional sell. There's all the inclusions. There's some info about the different types. There's your 2 QR codes. There's my cell phone. Write a review, text me. I'll send it over to you. Thanks, guys. Sorry for going over.
Awesome. Give them a hand. Thank you both. Please be here next Tuesday. We're going to go over some marketing strategies that are going to be very different than what you've heard in the past. So if you want to be more effective with social media and just marketing in general, be here next Tuesday, 11 a.m. Make it ready. Thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate our lunch sponsors. Give them a hand and enjoy lunch. Have a great week.